Okay, joining me right now is the superintendent with the F Division in Southern Saskatchewan, is Kevin Kunetzki. Is that how I say your last name?
You're pretty close, Kunetzki, but
Kunetzki.
it's pronounced many different ways depending on what area of the province I'm in.
Okay. So, rural crime. And I want to say right off the top, I really appreciate you being here today. This is a difficult subject. I'm sure there are, when we talk about rural crime, it brings a lot of emotion out of the audience. We're going to try to get to some answers and hear about some of the pilot project you have running. So let's start a little bit more broadly. What does the data show right now in terms of rural crime in Saskatchewan?
Sure. Well, I think when we look at the data for rural crime, at least in Saskatchewan, what we're seeing is a 5-year trend if we look back over the 5 years, and which is probably why we're talking about right now. We have seen some increases in property crime in particular, and in other areas as well. Our persons crimes. And so I think we've seen, and I have the figures here with me here right now, over the past 5 years, we've seen a 10% increase in property crime when we look at it from that perspective. And that's, that's when it's started to become a real item of discussion at the coffee shops, amongst the senior management of the RCMP and that sort of things. And that's where some greater emphasis started to take place on addressing some of those property crimes. And over the last couple of years, though, it peaked in 2016, just so at least from our perspective, and it depends on reporting and a lot of other information that we would need to analyze. But essentially, property crime has peaked in 2016, and we're seeing a slow decline, and we'd want to see that a lot steeper of a decline. I think would be everyone's goal, but a sharp increase, and which got everyone's attention, and now we're starting to see a slow decline.
What created that decline? Is it based on just cause, or were there things that changed in the way that we were trying to tackle the issue?
Well, I think it's all starts with awareness, having a discussion. First of all, it doesn't matter what problem you solve. The first the piece of solving is having that awareness, that realization that we do have an issue, and then we can start to address it. And then you'll start to see everybody tackle it. So from the RCMP's perspective, we might be focusing more on our prolific offenders, identifying through our crime analysts who are these people that are causing the most problems and addressing those. From a societal perspective, having that awareness is getting that information out there so people can start reporting it so that we can address it, get the right intelligence, and deal with those issues.
Is it really just lack of resource issue? Like, would doubling the feet on the ground, is that really one of the answers, or is it too simple?
Yeah, that's too simple of an answer. I think that's the common answer that we hear all the time is we just need more police officers on the street. But from an internal perspective, I think it's more complicated than that. And some of the things that we've even done internally is even look at restructuring how the RCMP or any police service for that matter is looked at. And that can be increasing our crime analysts. So it's not necessarily a person like an officer like myself. I have a sidearm. I'm equipped to deal with a variety of situations, but I think where we found some of the bigger successes now is in investing in crime analysts, and that's where we have all this data that's coming in, and we look around. Everyone here has a smartphone, and we're really pushing a lot of information into databases, and it becomes more and more difficult to analyze just from a rudimentary perspective. And so that's one of the first things that we've done is hired more crime analysts to look at that data and make sense of it, and then be able to report that to officers like myself, who can then go out and target specific people or specific locations to really have the biggest impact on crime. So it's not just having more police officers on the street, it's looking at ourselves internally, how we're structured.
Big data has an impact in policing as well. We're always talking about big data in agriculture, but it obviously is a factor in policing as well. Is the barrier still, though, remoteness?
Well, when we talk about rural crime in particular, we're seeing the demographics change, and so I can share with this audience. I've spent most of my life, born and raised in Alberta, but I've spent most of my life, at least all my summers, growing up in rural Saskatchewan and around the Cabrey Pennant area. My uncle has a farm there, and so I spent a lot of time on the tractors and know the area. And my Bubba was from Kenora, and my grandma from Swift Current, so I know southern Saskatchewan fairly well, and it's remote, and the demographics have changed. Where we've seen a lot of family farms in the past, we still see to some of that to respect. But we're also seeing now corporations and farming is getting bigger, and so the distances between houses and people has grown. We see a slow migration into larger centers, and so we have to be alive to that, and we have to look at how is that impacting policing, and how can we make a difference to solve some of those things.
So we got a question here from the audience. Dan wants to know what created the increase in rural crime, and I'm gonna make a guess there that it has a lot to do with the opioid crisis is a factor here. Is that correct?
It's absolutely a factor, and it's one that we all want to be aware of. And I think health professionals are looking at it in particular, as well as policing. Probably a broad range of ministries are looking at the drug problem. That's usually what fuels property crime. We'll steal and sell and to get the drug. And opioids are one of the biggest concerns that we have across Canada, and in fact around the world. This isn't just a Saskatchewan problem, or an Alberta or Manitoba problem, or even BC. This is everywhere. Even just, and I'm sure many of you have been on holidays. I'm down in Phoenix and I'm running on the gym, and it's the big headline across the top is the opioid crisis.
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and it's a factor in Canada, and of course the United States, and it's a huge concern with it. Canada's and actually some of the areas, some of the rural areas, some of the small cities. I think cities under 100,000 have some of the highest levels of issue.
Nobody's immune.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the pilot project.
Sure.
So you're going to tackle this rural crime issue. You're running a pilot project in southern Saskatchewan. What is the project?
Well, there's a lot of different ways we're tackling rural crime, but one of the ones that we talked about is unique to rural is the remoteness, and so it becomes more and more challenging for the police to be everywhere. We can't be everywhere at any given time, and so we want to create that network of the eyes and the ears. And in the past, that's been done with the Rural Crime Watch programs and leadership, and we still want to continue that. And I encourage you, if you're not signed up for a Rural Crime Watch program, to be signed up or get one going in your local area. But to help support that program and to even allow for a bigger expansion down the road, we've come up with this concept of the Saskatchewan Crime Watch Advisory Network. And what that allows the public to do is for everyone to be signed up. And so whether you're interested in being a part of the Rural Crime Watch, I think everyone has an interest in keeping their communities safe. And so what we're asking people to do is to go online and to sign up for the system. It literally takes 60 to 120 seconds, not that long at all, to sign up. And you sign up for any detachment areas that you want to start receiving notifications for. And the detachment commanders or the detachments, in turn, as we become more familiar and confident with the system, will continue to send out messages to you, and so you'll get those in a more timely manner. So the traditional way of what would happen normally is we would send something to the media. And depending on when that information would come out, it could be the next day, but more than likely it's probably going to come out in a weekly or a monthly bulletin or paper. And by that time, it's old news. And so we, with this system, can get information out immediately. I'll be surprised if there was somebody in the room here that didn't have a cell phone of any kind or some way, a method of communication. So this allows us to get that message out very quickly. Now, there's still a great benefit to getting that information out to the media. We're going to continue that, and because they also have already pre-established networks, and so it's a combination of the two. And you can receive, you don't need an app. We often hear everything, well, you can download the app. I can tell you this does have an app, but you don't need it. You just need a phone, and so you can get messages via text, by email, and even if you just have a landline, the system will convert the text to voice, and we'll call your phone and relay that information to you.
And actually, we ran a story on this when this came out. We have a story on RealAgriculture.com where you can get the information how to sign up and get signed up, and make sure you do that because it's important. Did you create this pilot project yourselves, or did you sort of tweak it from another area that's using it, or what'd you do?
It's a homegrown in the South District.
Made in Saskatchewan solution. How Saskatchewan is that?
So that's why we get to start it in the South, I guess. And we've talked about, whether or not we expand the system. We want to get it up and running, get people familiar with it, and if it looks like, it's going to see some benefit, then we can look at, growing that network. And but it really actually starts from an internal use that we had, and also looking at how we can communicate internally better with our members in their off hours and those sorts of things. And so it's a system that can not only be used externally but internally as well. And it's just trying to leverage as much as possible the innovation or the technology that exists out there today, and turn that into something positive for the the people of Saskatchewan and for our organization.
Cool. I moderated a session on rural crime at Farm Tech with one of your colleagues, and one of the big messages that came out of that was having to explain why it is dangerous to take some of this into your own hands. And he gave the example of high-speed chases, how getting into a high-speed chase to chase down somebody that maybe stole something off your property is not a good idea because police themselves don't like to get into high-speed chases. Can you talk about that?
Well, in the heat of the moment, and I've been in police pursuits myself, in the heat of the moment, everything goes out the window, and you lose focus, or you become extremely focused on one particular issue, and you don't have that situational awareness around you. So it's not different for the police as it is for the public. In terms of the danger, the difference that we have is that we are equipped with tools to interact in some of those more dangerous situations. But the best tool that we have, and every case is going to be unique. I'm not going to sit up here and say which case you should or how you shouldn't intervene, because I would be talking about a million different scenarios. But by and large, the best way that we can all help, I think, is to be a very good witness. And memory recall, by studies is not that great until we become focused witnesses. In other words, we know what we want to look at and memorize. You're going to be a better witness, and that's the message I'm going to give to this audience and the audience that's listening on air. Is make yourself a good witness and see if you can get that license plate. Make note of the suspect description and the vehicle description, something that we can use to further the investigation. Okay,
quickly, we're going to run. There's a number of questions on the Slido app. We're going to kind of lightning round here, go through them. What type of messages or crime notifications are they going to get from you?
Sure, two types of messages that we see coming out with the system, and as we learn more, it may evolve. But those two cases are when we want the public's assistance or when we identify trends. So I'll start with the second one first, so trends. So we might have a particular problem that's identified by a detachment commander. Let's take Swift Current Rural, for example. Maybe they identify that out in the Cabri area, they've seen a rash of break-in-enters, and through various witness statements, we've identified, the suspect vehicle's a Ford, and then the next witness in another crime says it's got a partial license plate of ABC. We can put that information together, get that information out to the public, number one, just to let them know that maybe we've got an increase in break-in-enters that are happening in the area.
Okay, about a minute left. In many businesses, 80% of the business comes from 20% of the customers. Is this true in crime? How do you focus resources to solve this problem? I don't want to give you a minute, but
it's the rule of 80-20. It's exactly the same. You can probably apply that to many different business lines. It's the same thing. We have 20% of the offenders committing 80% of the crimes.
Okay, Kevin, this has been fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much to your audience, and I encourage everyone to sign up. Just Google the Saskatchewan Crime Watch Advisory Network and get yourself signed up. It'll take you right to the link.
Okay, and if you have any questions on that link, come and talk to me. We'll make sure we get it out to you here today. Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.